Beijing insists Taiwan's involvement must follow the One China principle amid soaring tensions. Now we start with Asia. China has announced that it will extend the suspension of the additional 24% tariff on U.S. goods for 1 year, while keeping a 10% blanket tariff in place. The Ministry of Finance, citing the State Council, has said that the move follows a consensus reached during China-U.S. economic trade consultations and will take effect from November 10th. The announcement comes as after last month's talks between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Donald Trump in South Korea, which extended a trade truce for another year. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Ajay Dua. He's a former Secretary of Commerce and senior economist, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajay, for joining us again. Good to see you. Dr. Ajay, how could China's extension of this tariff suspension impact U.S.-China trade tensions now? And to what extent can trade expos that's taking in China now and large-scale import programs offset concerns about China's limited market access and protectionist policies?
Thank you for having me in this discussion. I think China has taken a major step today by announcing this concession. And I call it a concession because we do not hear the corresponding measures which the US is going to take after their understanding yesterday in the 5 or 6 rounds of the trade talks which have been taking place. I think the opening up of the Chinese market to US soybean, of which 12 million tons, as much as that, are expected to be imported, and removing the 15% duty on it which used to exist earlier, I think China has shown the US that it means business to get back into the high level of trade which the two countries had. Also, China has removed the 24% duty which it had levied some time ago and only retained the basic 10% duty which had been on the US products for some time. So I think the Chinese are acting on what has been agreed yesterday and in the broader understanding of what was agreed in South Korea at the APEC, on the sidelines of the APEC summit, when the President of China and the President of the United States had a very good meeting, to which, if you will recall, President Trump gave it a score of 12 out of 10, saying that it was such a good meeting. I think on this issue, the Chinese seem to be very happy that the US called them an equal partner in the world affairs when it treated it as one, when it told them, let's work together now to settle the Ukraine dispute. That was, I think, a bolt out of blue for China, which had been working on getting an equality with the United States for a long time, and here was a bonanza to it, given to it by President Trump himself. And also, the President Trump did not raise the issue of the Chinese threats to Taiwan at all. So again, giving a hint that it's not sticking to any of its past commitments to anyone in order to build up a new relationship with China. It is good for China, it's good for the United States. I do not know whether it's good for rest of Asia, including India, if the two countries are going to be dividing the sphere of influence around the world between the two of them, as used to exist in the 60s and the 70s when the Cold War existed and the world's area of influence was divided between the US and the Soviet Union.
And building on that, Dr. Ajay, although positive, does China's new big market for all initiative do you think it represents a genuine commitment to global openness, or do you think it is primarily a political response to current trade pressures?
I think it's a mixture. And I say this uh, because I'm coming from the fact that the Chinese can survive with their large scale production, being the manufacturer of the world, being the laboratory of the world, and now for its industrial and engineering strength, which it is demonstrating, including in the field of pharmaceuticals, arising out of its advancement in biotechnology, that Chinese know that even if the world is opened up and they do not protect themselves with their tariff barriers, they can outcompete most countries of the world in the international market. So if they know that their products are going to be selling around the world because of its features, its pricing structure, etc., why not also pose as the messiahs of free trade? It works for them very well, saying, look, we are standing by the global order, we are standing by the World Trade Organization's motive of or stand of promoting free trade. We are with it. We do not want to put barriers, knowing fully well that it is not going to affect them adversely in any manner. So I think that's why I say that Chinese are confident about their being ability to stand in the free trade world, and so they are espousing that at the same time also taking a stand, a statesman-like stand that we advocate free trade.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. AJ, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Separately, China has said that it would lift tariffs of up to 15% on certain U.S. agricultural products, including soybeans. The Ministry of Finance, citing the State Council, has stated the move ends additional tariffs imposed under a March order targeting a list of American farm goods. This decision comes amid ongoing trade talks and follows the broader tariff adjustments between the U.S. and China, signaling a continued effort to ease tensions in the agricultural sector. Now we go back to welcoming Dr. AJ Dua. He's a former Secretary of Commerce and senior economist, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Dr. AJ, for staying with us. Now, looking at all these developments between China and the U.S., what political and economic goals might China be pursuing through these initiatives like these and lifting of tariffs, as well as their new big market for all export for China motto? How might this push to become the world's top export destination also reshape China's relationship with developing economies?
My guess is that Chinese are now having, in a way, become the manufacturer of the world, laboratory of the world, is now pitching itself to also being the strategic partner of, or a position of strategic eminence in the global affairs. And they would be able to do that by taking certain stances like espousing free trade, etc. The fact is the Chinese do not have anyone much to fear in the Indo-Pacific. If there was a quad where the countries were getting together, Australia, Japan, United States, India, I'm not sure now whether the US would remain as enthusiastic about quad, which major purpose was to check China's influence in the Indo-Pacific. The US has probably already demonstrated degree of coldness towards that initiative. And in any case, it probably thinks that in the Indo-Pacific, even if they have to check the Chinese in the sea, probably Philippines, which has a smaller navy than India, but it is strategically located to be able to check the Chinese ingress into the Indo-Pacific or the South China Sea. So, second, China also thinks that the US, in this division of the area of influence, if it materializes, is not going to be bothered too much about Asia. And it will leave the hegemony of Asia to China, and China would have only one country to contend with once the US is no longer majorly interested in Asia. That will be India, and I think China is fairly confident of how to be able to get along with India, or kind of whether it's economically, whether it is strategically, or it's otherwise. I mean, it's going to be a combination of factors for China to be able to become the uncontested superpower in this part of the world.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dr. AJ Dua for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Brussels airport is expected to resume normal operations after flight suspensions overnight due to suspected drone sightings. Airport officials say around 80 flights were halted, leaving between 400 and 500 passengers stranded at Zaventem Airport. According to a spokesperson, flights will gradually restart through the day. Belgium's air traffic control agency, SKIS, has stopped flights twice on Tuesday night after reports of drones near the Brussels, Zaventem, and Liège airports. Operations at Charleroi Airport, Belgium's second largest, were also temporarily suspended. As a precaution, the incidents follow a series of unexplained drone sightings near airports and military sites across Europe, including Germany and Denmark over the weekend. Drones were also reported above Belgium's Leen Brogel Air Base, believed to house U.S. nuclear weapons. Authorities are investigating, and Defense Minister Theo Franken says the activity appears coordinated, calling it an attempt to sow panic and destabilize Belgium. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Professor, looking at all this, how should European governments coordinate their response to growing threat of unidentified drone activity near their airports, also military activities, and being it so often?
Yes, you are right, Asuma. It's important for European governments to coordinate. Mostly the intelligence services should be constantly in touch, and I'm sure they are communicating regularly, almost constantly, for any similar objects that might threaten, especially airports, because at the airports it's very visible when disruption happens and passengers get very angry. They cannot go to their families or to their business trips, to their vacations and everywhere else. So it's not surprising that airports are targeted by those criminals. Again, the investigation will show who exactly these people are, but from previous similar situations, remember, we had the same in Denmark, in Poland, in Romania, in the Baltic states. Usually these are agents that are hired by the Russian Federation. Russia is very much interested in disrupting Western European countries, especially the airports, so there needs to be a very proper security coordination among all European governments so that these incidents are minimized and not disrupting the life of regular people in the European countries.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Popovsky, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion.